Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today I have the pleasure of speaking with Adrian, pub landlord. And Adrian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm fantastic. Nice to speak to you because obviously been communicating for a while, and yeah, it's a good thing just to
Yeah,
let people know what's going on in the real economy in England.
that's right. And I follow Adrian on Twitter, and let me show you guys where you can follow him if you want to know what's going on in the real economy. Because I talk a lot, of course, about markets, money, economic data, but it's really good to talk to someone doing something real, like running a public house, as you say, public house landlord, real money advocate, gold and silver. And that's probably why we follow each other, and we've been doing it for quite a few years, right, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching your videos for about probably 4 or 5 years, I would say. I mean, well before COVID. And I've just come across you on YouTube. I've been into all the silver sort of stuff and gold or whatever from probably 2011, I would say. When I seen a relative counting some, and I thought, I said, well, what's all that? They explained what was going on and everything else, and it just fell into place. And then I started studying it a bit and watching different videos, and well, a lot of videos on it, and got really interested in it. So it's a good thing.
I want to tell you about a company that is helping people claim back a lot of tax here in the UK. So if you're not in the UK, you might want to skip forward in this video. But if you are in the UK, you might not be eligible, but some of your friends and family might be eligible. So you might want to listen to this. So the company is called Swift Refunds. And what they do is, if you're a mobile worker working in lots of different locations to do your job, you could be entitled to a tax rebate related to food, travel, uniform, and equipment costs. Of course, this is not for self-employed people. This is for people who are employed, PAYE. So if you want to learn more about Swift Refunds, click on the link in the description and fill out the questionnaire, and you'll find out very quickly, within I think 30 seconds, whether you are eligible for claiming a rebate. And if you call them instead of going online through my link, make sure you say that Monaco 64 sent you there. Good, good. Just wanted to then ask you how COVID, and even before COVID, how has your business been affected? Maybe you can tell us a little bit your background and where you are in England.
Well, I was at the same place I am now. I mean, me and my brother own this one, and we were obviously working together. It was going well. It was busy. Good weekends, pretty steady midweek. And then obviously COVID hit. I mean, I remember days on a Saturday where I had to stop people coming in because we were too busy at capacity. COVID hit. Obviously, had to lock down, and there was a lot of fear, and shut everything up, put boards on the windows, and then we kept on opening and shutting, and it's not a very good. And then they had all the restrictions, which was, to be totally honest with you, a nightmare. Because we're having to. I mean, you were having to take the drinks and take them outside, so it meant extra staff on, and then it was a lot of pressure, but you could only serve outside. And then after all that's happened, you hear about the politicians who have been having, knees ups and booze ups, a free for all, and then it's just like a kick in the teeth, isn't it? And especially a lot of people, even people who I know, lost their businesses, over all that lockdown, because obviously they give grants out and all the rest of it, but a lot of the time it wasn't enough to cover the costs. You know, while you're shook because your business is just frozen, isn't it? And you kind of, um, which is quite difficult thing, because you're going down there and you're not serving your customers and everybody's locked in, and then obviously during the COVID, all that money which we were creating to pay for stuff, that's all come home to roost now. All that currency they were creating, I should say, that's all come home to roost, and it's pushing up prices, which we can see in different areas. Like, for example, our prices for gas, electric, water, bins, even the beer, the spirits, the bottles, the interest rates have went up to counteract the oversupply of currency, which has put the cost of loans, put the cost of mortgages up if you have a mortgage, or the cost of debt, which is also a bad thing. And also, obviously, the COVID loans, where they lend people, businesses money to keep them afloat, all that needs paying back. So it's all extra pressure on the business, all cost pressures, which when all these cost pressures go on, it means you've got to charge more. I mean, I could say, like, from my prices for a standard pint of lager, for example, it went up by £1 within the last since reopening since COVID, which is quite a large amount, because I remember years ago, because I've been doing this for about 20 years or so. I remember years ago, when the pint went up by 5p, there was hell on, everybody would be complaining and stuff. But now it's just accepted that prices are rising, and people kind of like accept that that's the way that things are going, because they see it in the shops, in the supermarkets when they're buying things. And it's not just hospitality or pubs, or it's like cafes, restaurants, lots of different businesses that are affected by these cost price rises. And you can see the point of view from the producers, because their costs have went up a lot as well, and it's all due to, I mean, from what I can see, is currency creation, which was happened to pay for, I mean, they're even doing it, still doing it now to a degree. I mean, they're paying people's electric bills in the house, which is just like, it's like ludicrous, But I understand that people need the extra currency, but if they didn't create the currency in the first place, then they wouldn't need it. It's like a socialist thing, isn't it? I mean, what's your thoughts on it all, Mario?
Yeah, I mean they did the same thing in Germany as well in 1923. They thought to solve the cost of living crisis there, they print more money, and we knew, or currency actually, and we know what happened. Uh, you are in Hartlepool, right, near Newcastle.
Yeah, it's not far from you.
Yeah, yeah.
Not far
So
from Newcastle. Probably closer to Middlesbrough than
yeah,
Newcastle. Middlesbrough, Teesside,
yeah.
Stockton. Yeah, it's a
To
bit out of
the
the way, but it's but I mean, it's a fairly nice area. We're on a marina where, I mean, we've got the tall ships next coming this year. The tall ships, which will be a great thing for the area. Um, it's okay, but I've worked all over the northeast, so
yeah, yeah.
and
To my
most,
American viewers, just to let them know, Newcastle, Hartlepool is the northeast of England.
which is, I mean, and it's often the politicians always going about, the north-south divide, and they're trying to level up the area, and a lot of the time it's vanity projects which they do, to win votes, or and it's not really effective in what they say, but still the prices rise over here with all the public spending, which is a bit crazy, really, when you think about it.
It's
Um,
interesting that you mentioned the leveling up, if you don't mind me
mhm.
interrupting you. I wanted to talk about that because I
Yeah,
think the uh, leveling up, like you said, these projects, they don't really help. They're just cosmetic. And I wanted to show you this chart, which I learned about how to get it today. And it shows you how the pound is shrinking against the gram of gold. So it's a really good way to look at it. So if you go back here to 1953, you could
and
get
that's obviously the
you could
gold standard there. Yeah.
get almost 2.5 grams, and now you
Uh-huh.
get barely 0.01 grams. And if you look here, the pound, well, 70 years then has lost 99% of its value versus gold. And even silver as well. If you go to silver, the same thing, 98%. And that's why I think there is the North and South divide. Um, to some extent, there are other factors, but I would say if we went back to sound money, the importance of the city of London and London would diminish relative to places like the Northeast and others, and people would put more importance in real things.
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah. Um, Obviously the amount of public spending that goes on, it's enormous. I mean, I read an article, and it was saying that for every £100,000 they create in this area, it creates one job. And I'm like, £100,000 to create one job. I mean, it's a bit out of control sometimes when you think of it, and these people are put in charge to sort of manage these things, but I don't think to be honest with you, Mario, I think they're a bit clueless from the looks of what's been happening. I mean, have you seen all the WhatsApp messages which have been bounced around and stuff on the internet?
Oh yeah, this thing about that came out yesterday in the Telegraph.
Yeah, it's quite
Yeah,
interesting, isn't it? And
it's
you
all
see, like
coming
they,
home
they
to
can't even
roost.
work out simple percentages being a prime minister, And you think, well, how qualified are these people to do these jobs? Are they just front people, or what's really going on in the backgrounds? Um, well, with regard to pubs and the COVID thing, you've got different business models. You've got leases, which are being affected because obviously with the cost price rises, they've got to buy a lot of them are tied to buying the beer off certain breweries or companies, pub companies, um, and they stick money on top to make extra to make extra money. And a lot of the time they're paying like 2 or 3 or 3.50 to buy in the products to sell the products. So what they tend to survive on is the dry sales or food sales is what you would call it. And the way that things are going with the price of electric and the price of their food inflation, I think there's some information about food inflation, like it was something like 47% on the dairy products and
Yeah,
oils and fats,
I've,
sorry, and then
yeah,
dairy was like
I've heard.
35, and that increases the break even for their kitchens. Like I was looking at an article before, and this guy was saying I used to be able to open my kitchen and it would cost me 700 quid to break even, and now it's £3,500 a week I've got to take to break even, just in food sales. So obviously that's going to affect the least pubs a lot more than these freehold sites or the managed houses. So I
Are
think that's
you
what.
a freehold?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you're not like beholden to the breweries.
No, I mean we can buy off who we want. We've got a deal going at the moment with Heineken, which is okay. But even there, I mean, even for us, they put our prices up by 30% within a year. And the last price rise was 15.7. I think 15.7%, which is a big rise for that, considering that each year they would put the prices up maybe about 5%, and then out of that you'd probably get about a 2 or 3% rise. Which it's a hell of an uplift. But obviously their cost pressures are on them as well because they're producing all this beer and they're having to buy in these increased costs of barley and malt and hops and all the
Yeah.
rest of it.
Did you hear that Bill Gates is actually bought into Heineken?
I read something like that last night. I thought it was quite interesting. Maybe because it's indebted. He's thinking, well, I'm getting a bargain here. Because there's a lot of pub companies which have a lot of debt, like Stonegate, for example, have quite a bit of debt, um, which is not a good thing when interest rates are rising the way they are. And it's going to probably strangle a lot of companies. You could say that it's like a noose around the neck. And what they tend to do with these big pub companies, because I used to work for one before, um, is when these recessions come along, the banks say to them, look, you're going to have to restructure everything. You're going to have to get rid of all these sites where you're losing money on or not making enough and sell a few freeholds. And that's what we're seeing now. They're selling off sites and they're just trying to shore themselves up a bit.
And how tough has it been for you to keep running, during these last few years during and after COVID?
Um, it's I mean it's been okay, but see, I mean it's gonna be it's obviously tougher than it was, but we're not in a bad position because we didn't go out and like for a few years we didn't take wages out, so we had cash in the bank, so to speak. But a lot of businesses are not in that position. They're in the position where I mean, I see them daily on the forums and stuff where they're saying, look, the electricity's £2,000 a week now. I'm taking 4 grand or 5 grand, and there's no point in me being here. I'm going to just put the keys in. I'm leaving. And a lot of people are going bankrupt and things like that. The smaller independent operators. Which is shown when I look through the CGA graphics and stuff like that. That's what it was shown back to me, the similar sort of thing. Managed houses, they're a bit insulated because they've got large credit lines. But the small independents are the ones who are most affected.
So it looks like you were running a tight ship and you were like careful, and so you've been able to stay in business, and that's probably pretty good, because if you can survive through this, you'll do well on the other side, don't you think?
Oh yeah, yeah. Myself and my brother, yeah. I mean, it's the best way to be, isn't it? You're best off like being a bit like that. It's just like finances in the house, I suppose. If you see your costs going up, you've got to be able to balance them out. But the problem is where the problem comes in is where the consumers, I mean, they're getting hit by all sorts of bills. So the electricity bills are shooting up, the gas bills are shooting up, the petrol bills are shooting up. The cost of running insurance for the car, everything. The mortgages are going up. And I mean, what's the first thing they're going to cut? Restaurant spending, probably. Maybe days out or something, holidays. I seen that information that the people are not going on holidays much and they're staying at home and they're going and like going to Blackpool or Margate or wherever, like local sort of towns rather than flying away abroad. And that's a consequence of the inflation, isn't it? The price increases on different things because they cannot afford it. And it's the same for nights out. Like you look at the information, like when I first started, people were out every night. They were out on a Wednesday night, on a Thursday night, on a Saturday night. They were out a good few nights a week. Now it's once a week, some people, probably about 30-40%, and then once a month for some people. So that and they tend to go out on a Saturday night now. And when you look at like research into that, it's that most people would choose to go out just one night on a Saturday rather than as when you were younger, when you went out, it'd probably be busy on a Friday and a Saturday. Quite, they were both busy nights. But now
Yeah, I
it's
remember Thursday was a big night to go out. Like when I worked in the city of London, we went out
yeah,
Thursdays, and I guess that also affects how much you have to charge, because if you don't have as much footfall, you're going to have to charge more to cover your costs, right?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. And obviously with the increase in costs as well, I mean that's pushing everything up as well. Um, like I was saying, a pint, where pint goes up, it's going up in price, and they always report on it. It's like £7 a pint in London or whatever. What's like, well, the overheads of them businesses in London, they never sort of like discuss that and discuss why the reasons are, or it's always just well,
How much is the pint up where you are, the pint of lager? You said it went up by a pound, so but how much is it
I
now?
mean, roughly we're at about 475, 485 for a standard lager now.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, we were 385, so it's roughly about £1 more. But it's just one of them things. I mean, when I look at the costs, well, the costs have went up by about 20, 25, 30% or whatever, you know, especially energy costs. And we were lucky in a way because we fixed it um, before they really shot up, you know, so they were going up, but before they were at like ridiculous levels. See, I was talking to the B rep actually about this, and he was saying that some of his clients were paying like £1.30 unit a kilowatt for electricity, and it's just going to kill you, isn't it? You know, as a business, if you're spending out thousands and thousands a week just on electricity. I mean, most pubs, the bottom line profits quite low. You know, you look at a few percent.
You were able to, did you fix the energy price, your utility bills before?
Well,
Because it
there's a
started
guy who,
up in 2021.
yeah, there's a guy who comes in here, and he works for one of these energy brokers, and he was saying, "Oh, look, they're going to go up, so you're best off doing a contract now before your contract ends, and then going forward and doing that." So that's what we've done. We're lucky really, because I think we're paying like 27 pence or something a kilowatt, whereas so most of the other businesses now are probably looking at about 40, 50 pence at the moment, but it did go up to 80 pence, 90 pence a kilowatt. And that was really concerned. Some people just left the businesses because they were thinking, well, I can't afford this. You know,
How long were you able to fix that for?
I think it's fixed in for 4 years.
That's good. So that's going to give you a cushion.
It might be 5 years actually. Yeah, yeah, 5 years. I think it's fixed. So it'll be like 4 years left on it. Yeah, it'll give us a cushion. Yeah, but some businesses haven't been that lucky. You know, a lot of them are suffering through these higher energy costs. I mean, if it's costing you £1,000 a month, and then that suddenly skyrockets to £4,000 a month, you're going to find that money from somewhere. And if you don't, you're going to end up not making a profit. And that's the whole point of being in business. I know that profit's like a dirty word now, as you would call it, but I mean, you've got an obligation to make a profit to your staff, yourself, your customers, to keep open, to keep going. Um,
Yeah, people don't seem to understand that. They think it's a bad thing, you know. Well,
I don't know if it's because they're brainwashed or something, or that
yeah,
they're watching TV, or what it is. What they seem to think it's it's like a dirty word. Oh, it's making a profit, and you're just trying to. And what I think it comes to is, these price increases. I believe, whether it's right or wrong, is that the government somewhat suggests that it's a businesses price gouging or trying to push prices up. And we see, I mean, we study like high inflation environments or hyperinflation. It's always the same scenario. They blame the businesses for putting the prices up, saying they're greedy. And you hear it all the time. They say, "Oh, they're greedy, they're greedy," And it's like, well, they're not being greedy if their costs have went up. Like the farmers, for example, now, they're saying, "Oh, well, they're being greedy. They're asking for too much money." Well, they're not going to sell it for less than the cost them to produce the product. They're going to heat greenhouses and grow all these vegetables and make a loss at the end of the year. They're just not going to bother, because it's kind of like, and the supermarket's kind of like trying to price fix and keep their prices low for whatever reason, to make more margin or whatever it is, or to keep the customers happier and be competitive with the other competitors. But by keeping the prices low, they're affecting the farmers, and it comes to a point where the cost of production is more than and they're not charity workers. They're going to just say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to do it." And I think that's what's happening with the farmers. And I think you were saying, was it today you released a video with Clive? I've only watched half of it, and you were saying a similar sort of thing. I think about the the cost of production and stuff like that.
yeah. I watched a hen farmer in the UK. It was late last year, sometime in November, and he said the big supermarkets, they want to only pay us £1.35 or something. and he said our cost of production is like £1.50. He said, "What's the point of selling
Why would you? And
at
then
a
you're probably paying
loss?"
fat on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you probably heard me talk about this, that inflation against government is impossible because government and the central bank that really inflate things. Because if we didn't have fiat currency, and we'd use like gold and silver, yeah, it's like bartering value for value. But with all this paper that they create, it just disrupts the whole supply and demand situation. And I think they point at business people because they're an easy target, and the press don't understand much about inflation, and they go along with it because it sells newspapers.
Well, I think that's a big problem is that most people don't understand what inflation is. And it is quite a complicated subject. I remember when I was first getting into it, and then somebody saying, hyperinflation's when it costs more to fill up a Ferrari, than what the car's worth. And I was like, what? And I had to think about what they were saying and bend my head around it. I was thinking, well, how does that work? And well, what it is a fuel obviously costs more to, £1,000 a litre or whatever. It costs more to fill it up. So a couple of £1,000 a litre probably in a Ferrari's case. And but people, I mean, a lot of people don't seem to have an interest in it, and it's quite a niche subject, really. But now it's becoming more mainstream. I mean, I seen an advert the other day saying from KFC with a twister thing on it, like a KFC fried chicken thing. It was £1.98. It was, I was saying, take that, Bank of England. I was thinking, are they suggesting that Bank of England is causing the inflation? Do they know what's going on? Is it, it's just.
That's a good step. Do you know any of the statistics as to like the pub industry? How many have had to shut down in the last year or so because of the
Something like 17 a week close, which is probably on par with what's been happening the last couple of years. But it's usually the smaller independents which are closing up rather than the big chain sites. And when I was talking about the leases before, a lot of the leases, they're then turning them into managed houses but putting them on a self-employed contracts. So these leaseholds like Enterprise Inns, for example, which is now Stonegate because I bought them. They're turning them into managed houses, putting them on self-employed contracts. And it's a bit of a thing to keep the wages at like 16 or 18%.
yeah.
And that's a way of them managing them houses, them pubs, and keeping them open,
It seems to
and
me that
selling them.
the lockdowns and what happened then hurt a lot the independent businesses and probably and
I mean,
I think that was one of the goals, to consolidate and control more. I even noticed the vet that we take used to take Billy to, but now Rudy.
yeah,
They've been bought out by a bigger. They used to be independent. Even the dentists, they were bought out, and there's a bigger one now, and
yeah,
so have consolidated a lot. I guess you're lucky to have survived on your own.
yeah, I suppose.
Well, lucky, and you did the right thing. And it's not
Yeah,
just luck.
I suppose. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I mean, there was some pubs, like there was one it was called the Porky Pint, and he opened up during the lockdown, and they shut him down and they stripped his license. It's been on for two years. Removed his license, so now that's him over. That's him finished with. But it's hypocritical because they were all in, having knees ups and stuff like that. And I think, well, I mean, and the
And they
judges
allowed
saying, oh
they
well,
allowed supermarkets to open. They allowed yeah, like big companies to open. Why couldn't they
yeah,
pubs?
yeah, that's right. And some of the smaller independent operators as well, when they did reopen, they couldn't reopen because they didn't have the staffing or they didn't have the resources to reopen at the times when they reopened to some of the bigger sites again by that. Of course, there's always going to be winners and losers, in an economy. But the big sites at the moment, they're more insulated against what's going on with the cost I mean, because if you've got like a 1,000 capacity, you know, boozer, you know, in a city centre, then your cost base is going to be a lot better than what somebody with a smaller, you know, in a percentage terms. You know, your staff's going to be a lower percentage, your energy costs are going to be a lower percentage and stuff like that.
So how is the if you can tell me the local economy apart from your business doing right now? Do you think it's on par with the rest of the country, better or worse? And
Well, in the north, I mean, certain areas are okay. Like you've got Newcastle city centre, and then you've got Durham, um, and then you've got, I mean, the Teesside area. It's a bit, how do you put it? It's been left to rack and ruin for a long time, hasn't it? But that's not to say that the Teesside area is a bad place, but it does have its problems, like with drug use and things like that. I mean, I read a statistic saying that, you know, most dangerous place to live is Cleveland, which is interesting because you never really think of it that way. But why is that? Is it because of the drug use? Is it because there isn't the you know, the economy around the area? Is it, you know, is it the job opportunities? I know, like in Hartlepool, a lot of the staff who work for me, they say, "Oh, I couldn't get a job before," you know, which is sad, really, considering, you know, because there's nothing wrong with them. It's just they can't get employment. There isn't that many jobs going around, um, which will be totally different probably to the area that you're in down London, because there'll be a lot more jobs going around, and people can probably just walk into a place. And that's not to be pessimistic, but I think like when they do all these public works, I think, well, why aren't they, you know, incubating businesses or using that money more effectively, you know? And there's a lot of people on benefits as well, which goes hand in hand. And there is people who, you know, take advantage of that as well, which is
yeah,
always going to be the
it
case.
happens here too, all the benefits. And I think uh, a lot of people are on benefits and they don't count as unemployed. So the unemployment numbers or employment numbers look a lot better than they should be. So,
Yeah,
yeah, and but like you said, you know, the government is they're spending. I mean, the spending government spending to GDP is like over 50%.
over 50.
Is
Yeah.
that more than half the economy? And we know, you know, that government has to tax to spend, and so
Which
it's
is probably why they're trying to bring in these digital currencies and that, you know, like so they can have more control over the currency. And I mean, I read a thing saying it was to prevent bank runs, you know, so it must be a concern of theirs. I mean, it did happen in with Gordon Brown. It was a 2010 or something, when and when in his memoirs he said, oh, he was going to bring it, calling martial law onto the streets because the banks all froze up because of the credit crunch or whatever they want to call it, you know,
yeah,
freezing
it
up.
was in 2008. I remember
2008.
going out in Bromley and with my daughter at the time and seeing people queuing up outside Northern Rock.
Yeah, yeah,
Actually,
it shares in Northern Rock.
did you?
The
Well,
waste of money,
yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah. Well, at least you didn't have too. Hopefully, you didn't have too much savings in it.
Oh no. But you know, all these sort of 2008. I think there was problems just after that as well, and the it was all it's all leading up to what's happening now, you know. And I mean, there was this crowd of people, which I think's hilarious, and they were saying, I mean, I was on Twitter arguing with them, and they were saying, you know, there's no inflation, you know, but currency creation doesn't create inflation, and you know, and it's like, well, here, you know, of course it does. It's supply and demand. It's the dynamics of supply and demand. If you add more currency, it's going to push prices up. But they were arguing black's blue, and they were pointing to 2008 and said, well, all that currency they created in 2008 was, you know, to going on the balance sheets and everything else. But now it's being given to people, and I think that's a big difference, you know. And the
Yeah,
wage,
and
what do you
don't
think about
forget,
wage increases?
yeah, don't forget, Adrian, that a lot of that currency they created is still around as well, and it went a lot into the stock market, into
Hmm.
state and
Yeah,
technology, but now it's coming out and going into It's going into real things, and all the currency they created in 2020, 21. Like you said, it's a lot of it went straight to people's pockets.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So, I mean, you were a pub landlord, and you know better than Jerome Powell because he was asked in 2001 in Congress. Someone asked him, "Don't you think that all the currency creation, the growth in the money supply, will create inflation?" He said, "No, it has nothing to do with it."
he would say that, wouldn't
You know, you should be running the Fed. Not that I
he?
think the Fed should be around, or even Andrew Bailey. Yesterday, he said that they've just they're probably almost through with raising interest rates, which is crazy because that
Yeah, but what are they at now, Mario? I mean, you keep track
four.
of
I
this.
think the Bank of England
4.5
one
or
is
something,
at
5,
4%.
4%. So it's a 4%. And what's inflation at officially? 10?
Well, yeah, 10, and the
Like
RPI, the
it's
RPI is like
17.9 or 17.4?
13.4. Yeah,
13.4. Yeah. I mean, and 4% interest is going to stop that. It's going to bring it down.
yeah.
It's,
You need
I
to have.
mean, if you look at a website called Trueflation, I mean, that says that inflation's actually running at like 19%, or it might be down to 17% by
Let's have
now.
a look here. Trueflation UK. Let me bring it up. Uh, yeah, I heard of Trueflation, but I hadn't looked at it. They've got the
I think
US.
it does US and UK,
Let's do the. Oh, yeah. The US is a lot lower. They say it's only 4.9, but
which is interesting as well
I
because I was
don't buy it.
discussing,
Yeah,
I
there
was,
you go.
yeah, 17.19, and it's year to date high 20.14. So obviously, like the way I look at this is like within a few years you're being wiped out if you've got savings in the bank. I mean, if it's running at 15 or 20%, you know, between them figures, in a few years it's wiping out your purchasing power
Is that
by
why?
a large
So
degree.
you've been have you been stacking? Yeah, I guess since 2010 you said, right?
Yeah, like a little bit. I have a little bit of silver,
Yeah, yeah.
or not massive amounts. Which I keep in a safety deposit box, you know. But it's I don't know. It's getting more and more expensive, isn't it, Mario? You
Yeah.
know, you go to
Even
the
the
shop and you think, you know, should I buy gold or should I get a little bit of silver? And like, I used to just buy these little sovereigns, you know, for about 300 quid, and they were like 270, and then the 300, and then the nearly 400. I think the last time I went to buy one, they were 420 or something. I was like, they're just going up and up. But I mean, is the economy now like? Is it like Turkey? You know, where the prices. I mean, I was in Turkey about 4 years ago, and they were, you know, on 10 or 15% inflation. And the guy was like saying, "Oh, everything's going up in price." Is that the stage where we're at, or are they going to turn around and control all this public spending? Can they do that? Can they say to people, "No, we're spending too much currency, or we're creating too much cash. We can't bail everybody out"? Is any politician going to do that?
Probably not, and we'll probably get labor next year, and they're probably going to increase it. Not that the Tories haven't, and like you said, politically, it's really hard to cut things back because unfortunately, a lot of people still think that the government owes them a living.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That people sort of think that way, and that people think that the government will help them out, or you know, save them or something. When it's, you know, as we know, that the government's actually kind of the problem, isn't it? Well, it's not so much a problem, but the amount of spending that they're doing, that's a problem. So somebody strong will have to, for this to kind of end. There's somebody strong will have to take over and say, look, we're gonna have, this is the situation, and this is how we rein it in. And the Bank of England would have to put interest rates a lot higher than 4%. You
Yeah,
know, because it's like comical, isn't it? How can you control something which is, you know, unofficially 17 or officially
I
10 or
know.
whatever it
It's
is?
like in Brazil, actually, the central bank there, they've got rates at almost 14%, and their CPI now is like 5.7. So they're
Yeah.
cracking down on the inflation, but the new
What do you
government
think about
there,
the US economy? Because obviously that's a reserve currency. So the reserve currency is there. But then it seems like they're exporting the inflation. We're getting high inflation. Then I shared something today. I think it was from India where they were saying, "Oh, $1 buying this. It's costing this much for fuel now because the dollar's so strong." And what's your thoughts on that, Mario? Because I was talking to somebody and they were saying, "Oh, well, food
That
prices
that
haven't really
the
went up over here."
that the dollar, the Americans export inflation.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do. I mean, whatever because it's the major reserve currency still. I think countries still hold it as reserves, like
yeah,
60% of reserves. So if they create a lot of dollars, a lot of countries have to like keep
trading that.
up, or else their currency become too strong, and uh,
Yeah,
and then they lose on exports because they have to earn dollars to buy a lot of stuff still. But I think they're trying to move against or away from the dollar, especially people, countries like Russia and others, because of what's happened in the last year with all the
and
sanctions.
how do you think that's going to affect all the other currencies when they
Uh,
do
yeah, they
eventually
will.
pull away? I mean, one of the concerns I have is, let China decide to attack Taiwan or whatever, or because they seem to have like rough relations at the moment. And what happens if they put sanctions on them and they do all these different things like they've done with Russia? And how is that going to affect prices over here even more
Oh,
for electronics or what? Because basically a lot of stuff over here is imported from China.
yeah. Well, it's going to be, if that were to happen, it would make maybe what happened in the last year look like a small, a small wave. I would
Yeah,
say, and the dollar as well. The more the dollar becomes worth less, because that chart of the pound I show you how many
yeah,
grams.
it's devalued.
It's the same for the dollar. The dollar has lost 98%. The pound has lost 99. So
So we're winning the race.
wherever the dollar goes, the pound will go.
Yeah,
All the fiat currencies are a derivative of the dollar because of the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. So I don't have. I wish I could tell, prices are going to stop rising, but even if they stop rising, they're now at a much higher level than they used to be.
yeah.
So,
Oh,
and you sent me those data there about the prices of food and everything. And in the last six months, we've actually seen a drop in energy prices, but they're still going up. I saw the CPI for the Eurozone came out today and was higher than expected.
yeah, yeah. And as long as they're creating currency, I mean, the thing is, I always think it's going to happen all at once, and I think this is like a slow bleed kind of situation where inflation's bleeding, people dry the savings, the purchasing power is getting less and less and less. Even if the nominal amount grows a little bit, it's getting less and less and less. So it's buying less all the time, and I mean, it's just a transfer of wealth from the people to the government, and people kind of seem to see that.
Yeah,
I
to the
mean,
government, also like the people close, the cronies.
oh yeah, I mean, I've seen the thing about Middlesbrough being made in the voted a development cooperation, and then they voted against it the council, and then Michael Gove, this other politician guy, he's come along and they went over the democratic vote and created this Middlesbrough Council, development cooperation themselves. But there was one that's called Teesside Development Cooperation, and everywhere you look around, there's these little statues, and each of these statues cost something ridiculous, like 100 grand to make the statue, and it was all like backhanders, and you think, well, what's going on here? And it's like they're trying to grease each other's hands all the time, and it's not right. Because I think years ago the problem comes from years ago. People who were in politics were in politics for the right reasons. They probably had like a business in the past, or they accomplished something, and then they went into politics because they had some money behind them, and they weren't really there to make a lot of money for themselves or whatever. But now it's kind of like a game, and they're all like backstabbing, and they're just there and they're studying at college or university, and it's kind of gets to the point where you think, well, do these people have other people's best interests at heart? and you've got to ask yourself that question. I don't think they do. I think they've got their own interests at heart. I don't think they've got the best interest of the public at heart.
Yeah, they're not. They're not public servants anymore, and that's not a good thing. So, Adrian, what would you tell the viewers, not just in the UK but around the world, is the most important thing in terms of running a business? Not just what you did over the last few years, but going forward. What are your main goals, and how are you going to go about it?
The most important thing, I mean, at the moment, is keeping costs down and making sure that you're managing them costs, I would say, and also trying to drive sales. But the problem is at the moment that the sales are not going to be where they were, so you're going to have to try and make more money from less sales. So I would advise people just to look at the costs and keep the costs low and be smart about what they're be analysing the accounts all the time and the costs and the expenditure, and try and make the bottom line, profitable, because that's going to be hard in a lot of businesses. Just analysing things, I think, looking at additional sales, bolt-on sales, selling the same customers that they have, things like that.
Great, Adrian. It was really nice talking to you. Hopefully, we'll talk again.
Yeah,
I
keep up the good work, Mario.
Thank you, Adrian.
I enjoyed the interview you had with the new America guy. I can't remember his name, and the Clive interview the other day.
Yeah.
Both
Oh,
good.
was that the guy at
Mark, is it Marco?
Marco at the farm? Yeah,
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 that was quite interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He just
guy.
used to be a tennis teacher in Las
That's not
Vegas.
what he was.
Yeah, and he decided to sell up and go buy a farm, and he said it's worked out really well, and he didn't really plan to be be a productive farmer. He just wanted to cut down his expenses and
Yeah.
get any job he could, but to be out in the country and not in a big city. Yeah, it was an interesting interview.
Well, that's brilliant. It's good to have different people from different
Yeah,
sectors.
yeah,
Sectors helps you learn a bit about everything, don't you? I
yeah.
think
So
that's the way
yeah,
forward.
Adrian,
Okay, thanks for the interview, Mario, and I'll
you're
catch
welcome,
you
and
later
thank you
on.
for your time. And hopefully you have a busy. Is it busy on Thursday nights up there?
No, it'll be Friday. Friday will be the next day because, like I said, managing the cost, I've shut on a Thursday at the time being.
Yeah.
So shut midweek because of the energy cost. I mean, it costs us around about 50 quid a day, 60 quid a day to open up, and then if I put staff on, then it's a bit more. And a lot of the days, because it's cold up here, you won't find that people come out. But going into the summer or the next few weeks, they'll
All right.
start coming out, and then it's a
Okay.
lot better. Okay, thanks,
Great.
thanks, Mario.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye bye.